Notre Dame just delivered one of its most emphatic wins of the season against Pitt, and if they continue to ascend, this Irish team is going to be a serious problem in the college football playoffs. That's all coming up next on Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily home for Notre Dame football. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is now the #1 sports podcast network in America. I'm Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host. I graduated from Notre Dame. I work as a producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering Fighting Irish football for several years now. Today is Tuesday, November 18th, and thanks for getting your day started right here by making this your first watch or listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. And before we dive in, please take a second to make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. It's free, easy, and helps us out a great deal, so we really do appreciate it. Now today, we're rolling through our weekly Tuesday segment with Luke Smith, where we break down the 3 things we liked and 3 things we didn't like from Notre Dame's dominant win over Pitt. We're going to get into how the defensive line completely overwhelmed Pitt from the jump, why having a fully healthy secondary changes the entire ceiling of this defense, and whether Notre Dame should be slightly concerned about one of its top playmakers on offense. Let's get into it. All right, Luke Smith is back with me here, as he is every Tuesday during the season. But this week is going to be a little bit different because Luke abandoned his post and he did not attend the game in Pittsburgh. Fortunately, the Locked On Irish Intelligence Network spans the entire country, so we still got a boots-on-the-ground report.
Yeah, we did. We got one from Charlie Wooding, who I think he might have had better seats than he's letting on with this whole boots on the ground report. But it sounds like it was a pretty fun day in Pittsburgh. Obviously, 11 a.m. kick, but he mentioned the tailgates. And I think the most telling thing when you know you're in an NFL stadium is every tailgate is under a highway exit ramp. I don't know why that is, whether it's Atlanta, in some instances, Soldier Field. It sounds like Pittsburgh's the case too, but NFL stadiums generally don't have great tailgating setups. And as he said, the Pitt fans are pretty fired up and had some great tailgates. And it was refreshing to go to a non-competitive CFP program, his words, and be reminded these people still care about their little programs, even though they have zero shot of playing with a big boy program. Said he was told over and over today how it was Pitt's day, which is beyond delusional, but it's nice that they believe that. And, he said that it reminded him of a different era of Notre Dame football, basically playing a big-time school in the BCS. I would put this almost on a different level, but, despite ESPN's best efforts, you can't kill the soul of college football. And so anyways, he says tailgate scene's solid. NFL stadiums suck, but, what are you going to do? Said it was good atmosphere for like 5 minutes, probably 65-35 Pitt Notre Dame fans. And then as soon as Jeremiah Love scored, it was done and the pick six ended it. They tried to do the Aaron Donald halftime retirement. And that was probably something that would have been pretty cool, but because most of the crowd had left, wasn't that great. So that's tough. I mean, you saw this on TV. They really did bring out like all the greats like Marino, Revis, Dorsett, etc. John Gruden's on the sideline in Pitt gear. And it doesn't matter when your coach tells the entire fan base that they're going to lose 103-10, which felt like was going to happen for a while too. He will say crowd was as underwhelming as their head coach's words, and you could tell the fan base has just about had it with Narduzzi. There's a proud fan base here who deserves better. Can't wait to see what Samson's guy, head coach Tom Rees, does with Heinschel and Cade Bell next year in Happy Valley. Go Irish. It's a pretty good boots on the ground report.
I got to say, 1 for 1 so far this year from Charlie. Appreciate the contribution, and we need people everywhere. If you can't get there, Luke, and I can't get there, we need somebody's there because we're going to start every Tuesday with the Boots on the Ground report. But yeah. I was kind of blown away by how quickly that stadium emptied out. I mean, game days there, yes, Notre Dame was handling them, but it looked like the crowd was 30% full in the second quarter. Like, considering game day was there, they were bringing out all these stars. I thought there'd be a little bit more juice, a little bit more want to from the Pitt faithful, but that was clearly not the case.
And it definitely did look more crowded at the start of the game than what you're accustomed to seeing in that stadium too. Like usually it's like, there's nobody there, but it looked full. I was impressed seeing that on TV, but Then it looked a whole lot more like Arkansas did when that place was just cleaning out at halftime. Now, granted, Arkansas was down by almost 100 points at halftime, and they did end up firing the coach the next day. But I agree, it was a little bit surprising just how quickly they gave up. But I think maybe to the point Charlie was making and some of what you can see on social media, I don't think it's just Notre Dame fans who are done with Narduzzi. I think Pitt fans are pretty done with him too. And if that Michigan State job comes open, it might be time for him to look at that.
It just makes his comments all the more bizarre, unnecessary, and just flat out dumb because you have game day coming into town. You're doing all of these things outside of, or I should say off the field, like having Aaron Donald, Revis was there too. So you're making this such a big thing. I mean, Narduzzi was going on McAfee the day before. He was on College Game Day the day of. Like, yeah, it doesn't matter in the ACC championship race, but that would have been a massive win for the program, which is why it's now funny when there's some Pitt fans or maybe some Miami fans out there who are like, yeah, Pitt actually did not give their best effort. If they had won that game, it would have meant the world to that team, that program, that entire fan base, but clearly they were just not up for the challenge, and then they're trying to play that off as an excuse, which I find just a very annoying discourse surrounding this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's also just not true. I mean, they got guys back for this game that hadn't played in a while, like Desmond Reed, who might have gotten hurt again, and then Raheem Biles, the linebacker, too. Like, they brought all their guys back, their best players back for this game, because it did mean a lot to them, and as Pat Narduzzi knew, his team was just no match for the Irish. Pitt's not in our stratosphere. Frankly, they're just kind of another crappy ACC team, and they were the beneficiary of a 5-game run where they played some really terrible football teams. And, you know, Mason Heinschel might have a nice future ahead of him, but his offensive line could simply not block Notre Dame's rush at all. And it was a hellacious day for him.
It was. And now after that game, I think there's a very real chance that Pitt goes out there and they lose to Georgia Tech this weekend. Now, Georgia Tech did just scrape by Boston College. So who knows with that program and what they've been doing this year. They've looked really impressive at times. And then they've had 2 scares where they just squeaked by Boston College, but they also should have lost to Wake Forest earlier in the year. So who knows what to expect with Georgia Tech. But I don't really think Pitt has a chance of beating Miami. And honestly, that would be really helpful if they did.
It would be. I don't foresee it happening, like you said, but it's, I don't know. I mean, just going back to this whole thing, I kind of think that obviously last week I came on this program and made a comment about Pat Narduzzi and just how I couldn't believe that. I don't know why anybody would want to play for that guy. I actually think his follow-up comments were worse, saying he wanted to take away the pressure from the players and he didn't want them to feel pressure. Like, you compare that to any other big-time coach, like the guy who was across the sideline from him or Kirby Smart, and they're saying, you know, pressure is a privilege, and this is why this guy is a loser and he's stuck at Pitt, and he will never amount to anything because he's an uncompetitive human being.
All right, well, that's a good segue into the 3 things we liked, because I think your first thing just perfectly transitions into what you wanted to say.
Yeah, I mean, the game went exactly as I anticipated it would. I thought Pitt's little 5-game run was really the product of a soft schedule and that Notre Dame would come out and pound them, and they really did. From the first drive, they brought the fight to Pitt, and honestly, probably should have won this game by 40 points if not for CJ Carr's first interception as they were driving to go up 21-0, and then, of course, not being able to score from the 1-inch line. And I thought the score would be 42-17. It ended up being 37-15, and as we know, it really wasn't that close anyways, but especially with an early start, it was just nice for Notre Dame to end the game effectively in a 17-second sequence in the first quarter with the Jeremiah Love touchdown and the Tay Johnson pick-6 return, and that just really allowed me to enjoy the rest of my day. So I was definitely grateful for that.
As much as I normally don't like the noon kickoffs, I've really liked the 2 that Notre Dame has had this year because they went out there, they hammered Arkansas. This past weekend, they go out, they dominate Pitt, and then I got to just enjoy the 3:30 slate. Had some good games. Unfortunately for Notre Dame, Oklahoma ended up beating Alabama, which was unfortunate, but it was still fun to just watch football the rest of the day, knowing that Notre Dame had taken care of business in the morning. But I can't say that this game went exactly as I thought it would because I thought Pitt might be able to score some points. I predicted 42-21 in the preview, but you got to give a ton of credit to Notre Dame's defense and specifically the secondary. And that's the main thing that I like from this one. Having a healthy secondary has been huge for Notre Dame. This was the first game all season that Notre Dame started Leonard Moore, Christian Gray, Devontae Smith, Adon Schuler, and Tay Johnson, and they all stayed healthy for the entire game. Christian Gray looked great in his first action since USC. They clearly rested him for this game. He went out there, played really well. Devontae Smith is out there. He's healthy, and now he has played back-to-back strong games. Leonard Moore played at his usual level, and then Adon Schuler and Tay Johnson were unreal. And I think that we underestimated just how much the injuries in the secondary affected the defense early on in the season. And now that everyone is back, this group has been lights out, and they completely shut down what had been a potent passing game for Pitt with Mason Eintracht at quarterback. And Tay Johnson has been an obvious difference since he was inserted in the starting lineup. But now that Gray is healthy and Devontae Smith is healthy, this unit is performing at an even higher level. And then you've got like Luke Talich coming in and making some plays as well. So I thought the defense was great overall, but it really started with the secondary and Adon Schuler setting the tone on that opening drive.
Yeah, and really, when you look at Adon Schuler, I think the second thing I liked is really how he's played from game 3 through game 10 now, because he did not have a great first 2 games of the season. Everybody remembers the CJ Daniels touchdown in Miami where he should have taken his soul, but didn't. And then against A&M, he gets kicked out in the fourth quarter for targeting. And the defense really misses him down the stretch. That hit that you're talking about is clear evidence to me that he learned from that first game against Miami, because I mean, that's pretty much the same play, if not actually even a more obvious opportunity for him to light Daniels up in that first game. But he took advantage of it this time. And I think what's really interesting is the defense has really started its improvement in the second half of the Purdue game when Adon Schuler came back from his suspension in the first half of that targeting call. And up to that point, Notre Dame's defense had surrendered 91 points in 10 quarters of football. In the 7 games in 2 quarters since then, they've let up just 93 points. When Schuler came back, that's when the defense really started to turn things around. And that's really just, when I look at those numbers, that's pretty astounding, just the difference there. But on Saturday in particular, he was astounding. He had the hit that you mentioned that set the tone, a sack, TFL, and returned a pick for a 2-point conversion as well. I just think that like the way that you can stem Notre Dame's recovery on defense is back to when he kind of came into himself in game 3 and became a leader for that defense.
Luke is going to be right back here with us in a moment to break down the rest of the things that we liked from the game, and then we're going to turn it over to what we didn't like, including a really puzzling end-of-game situation for Notre Dame. But before we get to that, I want to tell you about FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth-quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Did you know that Notre Dame has the 4th best odds to win the national championship? That's right. They're plus 1,000 on FanDuel right now, and they're only behind Ohio State, Indiana, and Texas A&M. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I think him and Tay Johnson play off each other so well. I think that there's a reason. Like, obviously, having Adon Schuler out there is helpful, but I think his game has just looked totally different because he has an athlete like Tay Johnson who can cover a ton of ground, make plays, and I feel like it allows Adon Schuler to play more freely because at the beginning of the year when Notre Dame was trying to rotate at that other safety spot, you know, it started out with Jalen Stroman. Luke Talich was in there as well. I mean, Luke Talich still gets playing time, but usually when they go into that dime package where they have 3 safeties on the field. But the way that those two are playing right now, like, it's unbelievable. And Notre Dame has had a great run of safeties already, and these two are just next in line.
Yeah, and you know, it's pretty crazy just how lost that secondary seemed the first couple games of the year, and just the way they've rebounded. And I mean, honestly, if you had told me in September that Devonta Smith would be playing meaningful football in November, I don't know that I would have believed you, just because I kind of thought, based on how weird his injuries were in his history, that like maybe we just weren't going to get much out of him. But you're getting that now, and you're getting it at the right time.
Right. He played really well in this game. He's always been a physical player. He could always help stopping the run, but I feel like he's been really good in coverage. And Notre Dame ran a lot of man in this game, and they just were all over Pitt's wide receivers. But I do want to stay on the defense here and focus on the defensive line because that's another thing I liked from this game. They absolutely dominated in the trenches. According to Pro Football Focus, Notre Dame had 33 pressures in this game, which is insane. Like the defensive line just absolutely whipped Pitt up front all night long. Boubacar Traore had 7 pressures just by himself. Josh Burnham had 2 sacks. He continues to ascend. Jason Onye had a really good game. I could even list more names. Elijah Hughes was good when he was out there. Junior Tuialamaka was getting in the backfield as well. And yeah, Pitt did have some injuries along the offensive line, but this was still a dominant performance by Notre Dame's front 7, even in a game where they didn't have Gabriel Rubio. Donovan Hinish is coming off a concussion, and Jared Dawson got hurt in the game. He was not listed in the injury report on Monday, so it looks like he's going to be healthy going into that game against Syracuse. But lately, it's kind of felt like last year where it didn't matter who they threw out there, they were going to go out and make plays, and that's huge for this Notre Dame defense.
Right. And I think, again, just connecting to the point of turnarounds, this is a defensive line that in the first 2 games of the season could not get any pressure on the opposing quarterbacks at all. And I know that Texas A&M and Miami are the 2 best offensive lines that Notre Dame went up against this year. But I think still you have to credit some of that to just the improvement of the defense, and especially the defensive line over the course of the season, because now they look unblockable. And I know Pitt's not the best offensive line out there, but you still just have to give them so much credit for improving and really just trending from where they were at the beginning of the season.
And we got to give a shout out to Chris Ash because lately, all the concerns about him, all the talk about him at the beginning of the season, which I believe was justified in the time, but I think he's rectified a lot of it. I loved the way that they were disguising pressures. They were bringing blitzers from depth, and it was working out. Like Mason Heichel did not know where the pressure was coming from. Sometimes they were able to get it with just 4, but this was something you and I were talking about offline. If you look at Notre Dame's 10-game schedule so far of all the games they played, if we were to treat it like match play and you were just going to go game by game, I think it's fair to say that Chris Ash has probably called more good games, or he's gotten the better of Mike Denbrock so far this season. Now, obviously, the first 2 were not good, and those count for a lot because Notre Dame ended up losing those games, and Mike Denbrock called a really good game against Texas A&M. But the way that the defense has gotten better, Chris Ash has gotten more comfortable with his team. He understands their strengths and weaknesses better. Like, it's really, really impressive, and I feel like some people are still not willing to give him credit because they're still mad about the beginning of the year, which I get to an extent, but it's just been really impressive the way that he's been able to turn things around during the season.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do think that that's the right perspective to have. And somebody had said that to me on Saturday that, there have probably been more better defensive coordinated games this year than offensive coordinated games. And I do think that people tend to be harsher on Mike Denbrock than they need to be. And I think a lot of that really is a byproduct of them not understanding the checks that CJ Carr is making at the line or what he's even being asked to do. But that said, the defense has truly been tremendous for 7-8 weeks now. And that's because of Chris Ash and the work that they've done developing these guys over the course of the season and figuring out a scheme that fits them. And while it doesn't excuse the first 2 weeks, I do think everybody else kind of needs to get up to par and just recognize that he's done a really good job for a long time now. And I know there's going to be some people out there like Irish Friars Yabos 26.2 that are never going to get quite over their disdain for Chris Ash. But man, I'm telling you, it's time to get on board right now because he's got the defense humming at the right time and especially going into November and December.
Right. The fact that Notre Dame is playing this good on defense has got me feeling really good about how Notre Dame could fare if they do end up making the college football playoff, because I would love to see this unit go up against some of the best offenses in the country. And if they make the playoff, they will certainly get that opportunity. But now as we shift over to the offense, what is the thing that stands out to you the most about what Mike Denbrock's group was able to do against Pitt?
So I think it's having a get out of jail free card. And sure, Notre Dame's had this even last year with Riley Leonard and just his legs on third down. But it has been a long time since Notre Dame has had a receiver like Malachi Fields, guys that can jump out of the stadium and just be a release valve like him down the field don't come around that often. And for whatever reason, he still can't break 100 yards in a game. but he had a phenomenal game on Saturday, 7 catches, 99 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I think what's significant about this as well is that just for so long, Notre Dame didn't have difference makers on the outside, and that would always catch up with them in the playoffs. They couldn't move the ball downfield. Just really the throw game was really limited. And now Fields gives them just that. And that coupled with CJ Carr's arm and Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price in the backfield makes Notre Dame a very dangerous football team.
They've been taking a lot of shots his direction ever since the bye week. Like against Boston College, he only had 2 catches for 52 yards. But on the first play of the game, they were trying to hit him on a double move. They just ended up getting a pass interference penalty. Against Navy, he had 4 catches for 97 yards. And then this past week, his best game of the year, 7 catches, 99 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And as you and I have said, they need to throw him the ball more because he is that good. And even if he's covered, like he's still open because he's going to go up there and make a contested catch. I love that he's the get out of jail free card, but it would be nice to use the get out of jail free card when you're in jail. Let's actually use it near the goal line because I'd much rather watch CJ Carr just throw up the fade, which he did against, was it
Boise?
NC State or Boise? Yeah, I think it was Boise, where Fields was telling Denbrock, don't overthink it, just throw the fade. Well, they haven't done that since, and I think it's well past time to try to find Malachi Fields in a goal line fade situation because nothing else is working down there.
Yeah, no notes from me. Obviously, that continues to be a maddening level of frustration with Notre Dame's lack of success and the fact that 8 times this season they haven't scored in goal-to-go situations, which is just baffling. And they've still won every game or the last 8 games by double digits. But it's I don't see why not.
One last thing on the offense, I really like seeing number 88, James Flanigan, out there. And look, I really expected to see a lot more of James Flanigan this season. I even predicted he would be the most impactful true freshman on the team because of how thin Notre Dame was at tight end and is currently thin. And that prediction is not going to get home because he's played in now 3 games on the season. They're going to try to preserve his redshirt. But Flanigan did play 15 snaps against Pitt, which is only 2 fewer than Ty Washington, and he played really well. Like he delivered a huge block on Jeremiah Love's 56-yard touchdown run, and it was not easy. Like they had him pulling across the line, and then he had to go into the second level, and he laid a great block on Pitt's best linebacker, Lewis, in open space, and it was basically the complete opposite of last week's Jeremiah Love touchdown run because in that, Ty Washington just basically let 2 guys get right behind him, and it ended up creating a more fun highlight because Jeremiah Love had to throw these 2 guys off of him, and then he was able to go on and score a touchdown in spite of the tight end. Well, in this case, James Flanigan was out there making it happen as well as Eli Raridan, and I think Notre Dame could use some more help in the run game, and Flanigan could be a real asset if they were to make it in the postseason.
Totally. And I do think it's significant for that exact reason because nobody really seems to know what's going on with Cooper Flanigan, no relation. But he obviously, it sounds like he hasn't even really been practicing that much since he did get a few snaps against USC. So if they have enough trust in James Flanigan to give him some run in the postseason, I think that that's significant because one, him at full strength is probably a better bet than Cooper Flanigan not at full strength coming off this Achilles tear still. And that allows you to preserve, not only the year for Cooper Flanigan, which I think at this time is pretty much set, but also maybe doesn't make you rush him back into action. And I think that's definitely significant.
Yeah. Like I said, I had really high expectations for James Flanigan going in, and even though he's not going to quite live up to those, I still think his future is really bright. Big player, and the fact that they're starting to trust him more too. Marcus Freeman had plenty of good things to say about him in his press conference on Monday. So I think we're going to see a lot more from 88 down the stretch here. Maybe not against Stanford, but if they make it to the playoffs, I think he's going to be a big factor out there.
Absolutely.
Let's switch it over to the things we didn't like. I don't have 3 from this game because Notre Dame just dominated from start to finish. But what was the thing that you didn't like the most?
No, yeah, I'm pretty picky too, and really only one of them is specific to the game. But I would just say some of the end of game decision making I didn't love. I didn't really understand why CJ Carr was in the game, as well as kind of the other starters at the end when they're up 37-9 and driving, going for it on 4th down. Really thought that was an opportunity for Kenny Minchie to stick it to the team he was formerly committed to, and it kind of posed some unnecessary injury risk. And then when Carr actually did lead the team down the field, I thought it was a missed opportunity not to have Eric Schmidt attempt a field goal and try to gain some confidence, put you up 40-9 there. Also, if he makes it, I don't know that Pitt's going down and trying to score either. Honestly, it's 40-9, but not that makes a difference. I mean, actually, I shouldn't say that because they took a timeout with literally 5 seconds left, so they probably were going to try to score. But I don't know. I just thought there were some opportunities there to do some different things and not put your stars in harm's way, but it's pretty minor.
Yeah, I didn't get that at all. I totally agree with you. I wanted to see Kenny Minchey out there. They brought him in 2 years ago when he was a true freshman, and he came in just to kneel out the final play of the game. I really wanted to see him get his opportunity, especially in their stadium. So I was disappointed we didn't see Minchey. I would have loved to see Aeneas Williams get something, right, after what he did the previous week against Navy. And yeah, they need to get Eric Schmidt out there and just see the ball go through the uprights because, look, I don't think anyone on earth thought that 46-yard field goal was going to go in at the start of the game. So I don't care if they literally approached it like they were trying to kick a game-winning field goal at the end where they moved the ball to the middle of the field just to make it as easy as humanly possible. But the guy needs some confidence, and he just doesn't have any right now. And I think it would have been way more beneficial for Notre Dame to just let their kicker go out and try to knock one in when the stakes were really low, compared to trying to convert on a fourth down. And I know Marcus Freeman said, well, the analytics say we go for it in this situation. But did the analytics really matter when it's 37-9? Now you're starting to think about what could happen down the road. And to me, that was just a missed opportunity by Marcus Freeman to not let Eric Schmidt get some run, but also Kenny Minchey as well.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, I even thought, spinning upwards a little bit, the timeout by Marcus Freeman at the end of the first half that then allowed Pitt to kick a field goal poorly, and then they tried to take a shot that almost was ended in disaster. I didn't really love that either, with the way the time it elapsed, but I know that they do tend to stick to whatever their analytics are telling them. I'm a little surprised that that's what their analytics were telling them.
I agree. And the thing that I didn't like the most in this game also has to do with how it ended, and that is the final drive. And yeah, obviously, Pat Narduzzi calling a timeout with 5 seconds left so Pitt could score on Notre Dame's backups was, one, ridiculous, but two, just so Narduzzi, especially when he said earlier in the week that he didn't care if they lost by 100, and then he was clearly trying to make that margin of victory a little bit smaller. But Pitt never should have been in position to score on that play in the first place because they benefited from two of the worst roughing the passer penalties I've ever seen. The flag on Dallas Golden made no sense at all. I know you can't hit a quarterback below the knees, but he hit him right square in the gut and in his thigh. So I didn't get that at all. And then there was another one a few plays after that. It also allowed Pitt to get over 200 yards of offense, which I think just would have been a fun stat. Wow, they didn't even get to 200. And it's going to give people some ammunition to diminish Notre Dame's complete domination by pointing to the final score of 37-15 instead of 37-9. Let's just be honest. 37-9 looks better. It feels better. And the whole situation was annoying on so many levels. It just left everyone with a bad taste in their mouth as the game ended when that really shouldn't have been the case. Notre Dame should have ended that game on a high note. And then you get that just, are they really doing this? And they capitalized.
Yeah. I'm not going to complain about it too much. I still think they should have stopped them even with the penalties. It sort of is what it is, but yeah, definitely 37-9 would feel a little bit better. I do think the general notion is that anybody that watched that game knows that it was never competitive. It was even less competitive than Pitt's head coach, which is saying a lot.
I do have one last thing on the game, and maybe this is nitpicky. I'm interested to hear how you feel about this. Jadarian Price is in a funk right now. It's now game 3 of this. Okay, so he did have a nice kick return in this game. Very funny how he was just dragging the Pitt kicker for 10 yards. But he has not looked like the same running back over the last month, really, because in his past 3 games against Boston College, Navy, and Pitt, he has rushed for a combined 80 yards on 27 carries. So he's averaging under 3 yards per carry in his last 3 games. And on top of that, I thought he really struggled in pass protection in this game. He allowed CJ Carr to get hit really hard a couple times after missing a block. And I still believe he's a very talented player. He's done a lot of great things for the team this year. But I think that maybe the fumbles have shaken his confidence a little bit, but he simply has not played well recently. And considering Jaywan Sider just refuses to give Aeneas Williams a chance, Price is going to have to step it up a little bit during the stretch run.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt the Navy game was a bad game. Just no excuse. The fumble was inexcusable. Played really poorly. And then I agree, he did struggle in pass pro in this most recent game, but I kind of felt like he just didn't really play that much. I know it says he has 8 carries, but I felt like he wasn't out there that often, to be honest. And the kick return did happen, which was nice. I just think Pitt obviously was a good rush defense going into this game. I do think that, I don't know if it's a thunk or just a weird little spell here. I do think that these last two opponents should give a lot of opportunities for him to get back on track because they're not very good. So we'll see. But I do think these last two games will offer him some room to really kind of snap back into form.
So he played 27 snaps. Jeremiah Love was out there for 45. And I think it's possible that he's just not really getting into a rhythm. So he fumbled against Boston College because then he got benched during that game. And then he didn't really do much against Navy. They brought in.
He did have a touchdown, but.
Yeah. I mean, they were feeding him the ball near the goal line, I think, to send a message like, hey, man, this is your chance to figure it out and show us that you can hold on to the football. And he's making it more of a priority. Like he's covering it really well, but it just seems like he's running a little bit timid. But like you said, he's going to have some opportunities here down the stretch in these last two games to break off some big runs.
Yeah, no, he will. And he's not going to be in the Heisman competition. But unfortunately, we do need to have a conversation about whatever Notre Dame is trying to do with Jeremiah Love's Heisman campaign. And people might really not like this, but listen, I've met a few people that apparently look forward to what I complain about on this show, which I don't really think is what I do a whole lot, but it's fair. Anyways, historically, I do think Notre Dame's social media team has done a very good job. They put out great, like all access videos, post game videos. That stuff's all great. I've had a few issues with them this year, like when they put out a Arkansas hype video to a Jelly Roll song, but I digress. It's very clear that Heisman campaigns are not their bag. Because the 33 trucking campaign, my junior year of college for Josh Adams, was comical. It was incredibly bizarre how the whole school just had a bunch of trucker hats. I don't know that
for 1 week.
About that. Yeah, because personally, I threw mine out after the Miami game. But you will occasionally, especially in Chicago, still see one in the wild, like see a guy wearing it running on the lakefront, and it gives me a laugh every time. But what are we doing on these Jeremiah Love videos? It was one thing to set his highlights to a Nat King Cole song. I've seen him with a couple older songs with Love in the title. I could see how that sort of stuff could play to the right crowd. However, enlisting Nicholas Sparks' help feels like just a huge miss. And as a theology minor, I can tell you that I don't think that Paul's first letter to the Corinthians was ever intended to be used in a Heisman campaign like the author intended it to be tonight. I don't know how many of you actually made it through the whole video. I did. It's just not very good. If you haven't seen it, Nicholas Sparks, author of The Notebook.
He's an alum, right?
He is. It's also strange because I don't think until this I had ever seen him like publicly advertising Notre Dame. And to be honest, I almost kind of got the sense in the video that he like thought it was strange he was being asked to do this based on some of the commentary that he had. But in short, I think that this is worse than 33 trucking was because he kind of just wrote some prose using Paul's first letter to the Corinthians about Jeremiah Love's abilities, and it was way too long and just not really that interesting. And I didn't think it was possible to have a worse campaign than 33 trucking, but really disappointing because there are some serious opportunities to do something cool with a name like Love and whatever, and a player like him. And whatever Notre Dame is doing right now simply isn't it.
It's kind of like when someone goes too hard on a theme party, because I get the theme, right? You're trying to play off Jeremiah Love's last name, his signature celebration. He does the love with his hands. But if it becomes too much, it's like, all right, now you're overdoing it a little bit. And I think Notre Dame might be overdoing it. It's like if you had a medieval times party and everyone's just kind of in like, some costume that they bought on Amazon for $30. Then you have some guy who shows up as a knight in actual armor and a real sword. It's like you've probably gone a little bit too far. And I feel like that's where Notre Dame is with this Heisman campaign. Although, look, I am glad that they're really trying to do everything they can to get him to New York, because if he doesn't, they need to reconsider everything about this award. But yeah, I think maybe the execution could be a little bit better.
Yeah, it definitely could be. And I think there's so many songs and artists with stuff like Love out there, and just this is not it. That's all. I'll leave it at that. And I'm just a little bit confused why we went the Nicholas Sparks route. That's all I'll say, because it doesn't hype you up at all. It doesn't make you feel excited about Jeremiah Love at all. And he is the most exciting player to wear a Notre Dame uniform in my 20 almost 9 years of life. So it's hard to do this bad of a job with a player like him.
Love really is special, and Saturday will be the last time that he plays in Notre Dame Stadium, more likely than not at this point. I don't really see a world where Notre Dame ends up hosting a playoff game, but as we wrap things up here, where do you think Notre Dame will land in the CFP rankings that come out later today?
It'll be really interesting to see how it maps to the AP poll, which of course had Alabama dropping below Notre Dame. I think in the college football playoff poll, you'll probably see Alabama above Notre Dame still. I do think that win at Georgia, though I'm not really sure how it happens outside of the fact that Alabama kind of owns Georgia, is better than any win that Notre Dame has on its resume. And though Alabama is seriously flawed, especially offensively, I do think they'll remain above Notre Dame for now. But there's definitely an opportunity for them to drop the Iron Bowl, because especially anytime that game's played in Jordan Hare, something weird happens. And there's definitely still some scoreboard watching and some rooting that Notre Dame fans need to do, despite what the betting odds might suggest. But I do think they'll probably come in at number 10.
Yeah. The odds are crazy. Notre Dame was set minus 3,000 on FanDuel, but there are some scenarios that could happen where Notre Dame could be in some serious danger. But I'm with you. I think they're going to come in at 10. I have said this before. I think the best case scenario for Notre Dame is if they do end up being the 10 seed, because then they avoid Ohio State more likely than not, who I expect to be the 1 seed. And then they'd have to play the 7 seed. Could be Ole Miss without a head coach, and then they get the 2 seed in round 2. But it's going to be very interesting. Last week, I tuned in for the rankings, but it went exactly how I expected. I expect they'll have Alabama over Notre Dame, but this week is going to tell us a lot, because where they put Miami might just tell us if they care about that head-to-head matchup at all anymore.
Well, yeah, I do think with the Miami thing, they need to get closer up to Notre Dame to have a realistic chance, because right now they're not being viewed as in the same ballpark, which I think is fair, because Miami lost to 2 dog water teams. But it's okay. We'll see how this thing shakes out. There's definitely some opportunities for teams to still crack in and make things a little bit more pressure filled for Notre Dame fans. But at least we'll know this, because we have a 10:30 Eastern kickoff the last weekend the regular season. Pretty much all the outcomes that we need to know about, we'll know by then. So at least, maybe even Marcus will know whether he needs to put up 75 on Frank Reich or not.
All right. Well, we'll wrap it up there. Luke, we will see you next week after you'll be at Syracuse, right?
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be 50 degrees too, so can't complain about that.
Wow, how about that? A nice weather day for a Notre Dame home game and the last one of the year. So should be a lot of fun. We'll see you next week.
Sounds good. Go Irish.
All right, that's a wrap for this episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first watch or listen of the day. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe on your preferred platform, like the video, or rate and review the podcast. I'm going to be right back here tomorrow morning to react to the latest college football playoff rankings, and then we're going to start to look ahead to Notre Dame's upcoming game against Syracuse. Have a great rest of your day, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow.